I done lost my earring, excuse me. Gonna be just a few minutes, get myself together, and then we will start our book discussion. To those that may be joining later, we'll be discussing two books on today. For those that may be joining later, let me give you the books for next month, just in case I forget to do it at the end of book club, to book club live. We will be reading next month. Next book month's discussion will be Friday, March 20th at 7:30 right here live on Apostle Tina Pearl for Virtuous Divas Book Club meeting. We've been sort of faithful every month. Last week we had some things going on. I didn't have any voice, so I wouldn't have been able to discuss anything. I thank God for getting it back to some degree. Once again, next month's book club meeting will be Friday, March 20th. We will be discussing the following books. The first book will be Black Pain. Just what it says, Black Pain by Terry Williams. We're going to be discussing that. I had an opportunity to hear some of it. This past Tuesday. It's called Black Pain. It just looks like we're not hurting. The title alone got me, but when a man of God read just some excerpts of it, he read us a chapter, and I was looking to see what my phone was saying. He read a chapter to us, and just that chapter got to me. So, Black Pain by Terry Williams. It just looks like we're not hurting. We're gonna be talking about us, sisters. We're gonna be talking about Black people, our Black pain, what causes our Black pain, how we disguise our Black pain. Good book. The next book we will be discussing is called Black Girls Don't Cry: Unveiling Our Pain and Unleashing Hope by Angelica Lee. The second book, Black Girls Don't Cry: Unveiling Our Pain and Unleashing Hope. So we're going to be talking about pain next month. Once again, Friday, March 20th, 7:30 live. Black Pain just looks like we're not hurting. And then Black Girls Don't Cry: Unveiling Our Pain and Unleashing Hope. Terry Williams and Angelica Lee. That's just in case I forget to say what we'll be reading next month at the end of book club. Tonight, we're going for just a little while. We're going to be discussing two books. The first book is called The Sudden Appearance of Hope by Claire North. And the second book is The President is Missing by our former president, Bill Clinton, and a very popular writer, James Patterson. I love James Patterson's books. I just like him as an author. I'm a mystery thriller, psychological thriller type of girl. I like to, by the end of the first chapter, no later than the second chapter, I like a good whodunit. I'm trying to figure out who did it, why they did it, what was the issues behind them, stuff like that just get me. So I was excited about reading both of these books. The first one we're going to discuss on tonight is Good to See You. My co-host Nichelle Hines, who's in South Carolina, and I'm here in Cleveland, Ohio for a little while. Gotta get some things done on my eyes, so I'll be here. But it's gonna come a time when you're gonna see both of our faces on the screen acting a fool the way that we normally act a fool. I miss it. I know y'all miss it because we have a good time when all of us are on the screen. I don't know if my other co-host is going to get on, Sister Phyllis Rose. We'll see in a little bit. But tonight I want to discuss the sudden appearance of the sudden appearance of hope. It was an interesting book. It was. I wouldn't say it was a thriller whodunit, but it had its twists and turns. Now let me be honest. We've been doing this for almost 2 years. I think it's only been about 2 books that I really just didn't like. I won't say I didn't like this particular book. What I will say, it was a little challenging. It took me a minute to get into. No, I never really got into it, but it took me a minute just to grasp exactly what the book was really talking about. But this is a particular book about a particular woman, a young lady. She started off in her childhood. She started off talking about how she was loved, how she had a decent childhood, and then she said something happened. Something changed, and now she wasn't noticeable. People began to overlook her and act like she didn't exist. They would be right in her presence, talk to her for a moment, and then forget that they had conversations with her. And this began to happen in her teen years. It was a slow read. It was a very slow read. For me, normally I can get a book done. If I got a good day with nothing to do, I could get a book done in a day and a half, depending on how many pages the book is. And this particular type of book, I could pretty much get done in a day and a half. And it actually took me 2 weeks to read this book. Go figure. That's how much interest that I had. What I will say concerning this book, for those who sort of like a little mystery, she let people not noticing her or remembering her. She began to let it work for her, and at the same time, she was developing relationships along the way with people who didn't remember that she had relationship with them. Okay, y'all got to read the book to really understand that, because it kept throwing me for a minute until I finally grasped it and got it. She was in a particular country, and she met somebody who was famous. She was sort of fan struck, so to speak, and the woman died. And because people didn't remember her much, and this particular woman did to a degree, she went to the morgue. She got all of her personal effects, her telephone, everything. And the young lady had subscribed to a particular app called Perfection. And all through the book, we hear about perfection. And it was an app with people, or this particular app, talking to you to tell you and to give you instructions on how to become perfect, how to live the perfect life, how to have the perfect dinner, how to throw the perfect party, where to buy the perfect shoes for you. What amazed me is people subscribe to this app, but the app tended to make them at some point depressed, unsure, it gave them insecurities. It did everything but have them feel perfect about themselves. But the app was called Perfection. And I just thought that the author putting that within the story in itself spoke a lot to the main character, who was Hope. Her name was Hope. The title, after I read the book, the title finally got okay. The sudden appearance of Hope, because she was invisible, so to speak, and so she allowed that to work for her. She became a thief. Isn't that something? She began to steal things of great value and things that people felt couldn't be stolen. It was guarded too much, or it couldn't be done. And so she always had herself steal things that couldn't be done. But at the same time, she subscribed to perfection, and pretending to be other people so that she could steal things that were expensive, but also so she could be another person trying to be perfected on the app called Perfection. Y'all got to read. Y'all have to read this book. It was a decent book. If I had to give it, put it on a scale of 1 to 10, I would make the book about 6. I would say to you, if you go and get the book, The Sudden Appearance of Hope by Claire, Claire, Claire North. Just be prepared for it to be the first, I would say the first 5 or 6 chapters. Prepare for it to be a slow read. If I had to pull anything out of the book to just discuss for 5 minutes, it would be the fact that she thought she was invisible. It would be the fact that she would be in people's presence, have conversations with them, and they could walk away, see her a second time, and reintroduce themselves. And she took that to mean that people just didn't see her. I would go to say, how many times in our lives, or certain seasons in our lives, that we just didn't believe somebody saw us. People saw us for who we really were, saw us, just saw us, period, recognized us, be in a room and could remember us, us having to feel like we made a lasting impression. And for a long time, she felt some kind of way about not leaving a lasting impression, about people not remembering who she was, until she realized that it could work for her advantage when she became a thief. And she was an awesome thief. Now, if Perfection had to tell her anything, they probably could tell her a lot about her personality and what she needed to do, but they didn't have to tell her how to be a perfect thief. She had that. She would purposely start conversations. She would purposely wear certain things so she wouldn't be memorable at this point. She wouldn't be the magnificent blonde, but she might have dirty blonde hair, something along those lines. She might have braids, but it wouldn't be braids that would stand out and make her memorable. She began to realize that this thing can work for me. Now, it worked on the negative end, but for her, for what she did, it worked for her. So I would suggest that you would read the book. But just know that in the first 5, 6 chapters, it's going to take you a minute to get into it. Maybe chapter 6 through 10, you might get an aha moment about what the author is really trying to say and really trying to convey. What I do know is that you will attach yourself to the main character, Hope. I mean, even though she was a thief, you sort of begin to sympathize with her. Her best friend had a conversation with her. This is somebody she grew up with in elementary. By the time they got to high school, she wasn't even memorable to him. She described a scene where she was talking to him. He walked away, and he really didn't. I mean, the conversation didn't really hold no water with him. And she slapped him so hard that he ran out of the building. But that was because her feelings was hurt, because he made her feel like she was invisible. So when she made it work for her, she became a very rich woman with that skill of being invisible, to the point that she perfected that particular skill of being invisible, so that it could help her for what she did, which was being a thief and stealing expensive artifacts, expensive jewelry, expensive art. The sudden appearance of her is when she came into realization of herself, the sudden appearance of herself to herself. And that's what the book was really about. It was an okay read. Like I said, it was sort of slow moving. Nichelle, did you get a chance to read? Did you get a chance to read that particular book? If you had to rate it from 1 to 10, what would you rate it? I'll give you time to answer. We thank those who are slowly getting on. We appreciate you. I can't really see your comments. It's just telling me that you are watching. The second book I just want to take a little time is The President is Missing. I truly enjoy this book. I truly enjoyed this book. Like I said, James Patterson is one of my favorite writers. James Patterson. Okay. James Patterson, once again, is one of my favorite writers. And this time he had a co-author, which was our former President Bill Clinton. They did an excellent job with this book. It was a thriller. It was a sit on the edge of your seat. Please don't nobody call me. Please don't nobody have an emergency type book. I really didn't want to put it down. I had to go to bed. I had to get me something to eat. Those were important moments enough for me to put the book down. But it was a very good thriller. It kept your attention from the first page to the last page. It took some twists and turns. It had you guessing and second guessing yourself, because once again, like I said, I like a good page turner. I like a good whodunit. I like a good thriller. I want to guess to see if I'm right, see if my skills need sharpened. But it was about a president that the country loved, and the book started out with him being in a place before a hearing, a congressional hearing or a Senate hearing, I can't remember which one, that he was Senate hearing, that he was getting ready to be impeached. And he was talking with the senators. They were asking him questions. Now, you thought he was really in before a Senate as you start out reading, but what you find out is that it was a mock hearing preparing him for going before the Senate, because now don't this sound like the United States right about now? Because he made a phone call to a known terrorist, and he wouldn't reveal why he called the terrorist, because to reveal why he called a known terrorist would break what they call national security. And he was asking the Senate and the people of America to trust him, to trust that he had, as president, that he had the country's best interests at heart, that this was no foul play, that he wasn't aiding a known terrorist, but the United States was in trouble, but he couldn't specify the type of trouble. He couldn't specify what he called to talk about to a known terrorist. Now, United States is something. If our president, because we've been right here, if our president reach out to a terrorist, we gonna want to know, why are you calling the terrorist? What did you have so much to talk about that you had to talk to a terrorist about it? And a known terrorist at that. And so it starts out with that. It starts out with America being in trouble. America being in trouble with other nations. America being in trouble with this particular terrorist who had made it known that he was out to get the United States. And so it's a good book. As I was reading, like I said, a page turner. As we go along, in the book, the main character, of course, he had was the president, and he had his core leadership. Of course, they have the Secretary of Defense. They have his I forgot what you call the one that works close, chief of staff, his chief of staff, and all those that really worked around him. It was him and 7 other people. So it was 8 people that knew a particular code called Dark Ages. And 2 terrorists or former terrorists, one went to Paris where his daughter was and whispered in her ear, "Tell your father we said we know about Dark Ages." And his daughter called him, and that's what made him reach out to the known terrorists. The fact that they said, "We know about the code Dark Ages." And so it took a while before they began to let us see what Dark Ages was. But what Dark Ages was not necessarily a chemical terrorism or a terrorist saying that they were going to launch launch their codes and we be at nuclear war. But Dark Ages was the term that the 8 people that came together, something happened, and a virus was put into the computers on Capitol Hill and various important areas of the United States. The virus lasted all of 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, and as soon as it started, it stopped. And they called that Dark Ages because they understood if the virus had continued, everything in the wide world internet would have been wiped clean. What are you talking about, Tina Pearl? That means we wouldn't have known, we wouldn't have had access to our bank accounts. We wouldn't have had access to our Netflix and Hulu. Everything would have been wiped out. Now the only good that would have been is if you owe millions, thousands, and millions of dollars, your debt would be wiped clean. I was like, but we don't want no kind of cyber terrorism. But that's sort of, hey, can y'all just do it on that end? But wipe clean. But if you were a millionaire, all of your millions will be gone because there would be no way to account for how much money was in your bank account. I was talking with someone the other day, and one of the things I said, I'll be 53 this year. That's not old. It's what they call middle age. But I have seen a lot in my lifetime as far as the internet, as far as the wide world web. I have seen us come from them great big old portable phones that was big as your skull to phones this big that contain a whole lot of data. We can't live without our cell phone. We lose our cell phone. We lose ourselves a lot of times because a lot of the information that we have stored in our cell phones. I remember the way to keep people's telephone numbers is you had an address book. You had a small address book, women, to put in your pocketbook, and then you had a book like this size, the size of a tablet, or maybe a little bit bigger, because my big mama had a big one, where everybody's number, everybody's address, and you would go get your phone book to your address book to make your telephone calls. I come from an age where y'all know every year they delivered the great big old, the yellow pages and the white pages. We come so far as technology, and we are so dependent upon technology that if something should ever happen to technology, some of us wouldn't even know how to survive. Something so simple as a lot of times in the winter when our lights go out. Yeah, we get flashlights and candles, but what would you do if lights never came back on? You would have to go, because now we don't have the internet to research the fact of an oil lamp. That long before there was electricity, there was an oil lamp. So we've come so far as technology. Excuse me, I got to drink something. I'm getting my voice back. I'm trying not to lose it again. So this particular book, excuse me, was really about cyber terrorism and how a terrorist was threatening to put a virus in all the major computers, going through the internet for and he had the code to start it and stop it, so that it could destroy the United States, even in the military, all of their data, everything. And so here we have a president who's trying to keep his country together, but at the same time, he can't tell the country why he trying to keep them together. And it's during the time of campaigns, and we all know about those things political. It was campaign year. He was going up for re-election for the second term. So you going up for re-election, don't it sound like, well, Trump ain't trying to do too, but that's a whole nother story. But in retrospect, it sounds like Trump going through his impeachment while he's trying to run for a second term, and then something like this would break out, and then he would tell the nation, "You gonna have to trust me." Man, that would be something for Trump to say to the nation right about now. But anyhow, that's basically what this president was doing. And so there were just 8 of them who understood what dark ages was. And so part of his feat, and even though trying to save the country, was trying to expose who the traitor was, because it had to be within the confines of them 8, because nobody else knew anything about dark ages. And so it was a really, really good read. It was a fast-paced read. It was close to 500 pages, but you didn't feel like you was reading 500 pages because it was just that fast, just that exciting. They really need to make it a movie, an action movie. It would be something. The action probably would be along the lines of White House Down, with a little flavor of Air Force One, presidential movies. But it was a really, really good book. And I just want to say, I guessed who it was right at the beginning. I was so proud of myself, because several areas, several twists and turns, I was beginning to doubt myself and second guess myself. Well, maybe that can't be it. Him and his vice president really didn't get along. And she was a woman. She really didn't agree with a lot of things that the president was doing. She, in her own way, she sort of was throwing him up under the bus. And a lot of those that were around him, they were throwing things out there to make you think that it was each one of them, but it was only one traitor. And I'm gonna say this before I expose who the traitor was. He had the FBI director, the Secretary of State. He had I can't think of what this senator was over, but it was a senator, his chief of staff, a few other people they didn't really talk about, but they had to give you an idea of who the 8 was. But those were the ones that really had, if it was a movie, I would say had lines. They were part of the major character structure of this particular book. But it was just so good. So let me go on and finish explaining it. But you had an assassin who you didn't know who her target was. It was a young lady following. You never knew who she was following, but you knew she was always setting up to kill somebody. And towards the end, you got a chance to see why. Then we have the terrorist himself, who was mad at United States because United States was just the United States. And, we just have enemies simply because we the United States. And you had who this particular terrorist was working for. But as the story goes on and the president is trying to find out what the virus is, how the virus can be stopped, at the same time he's trying to find out who the terrorist, who the traitor is. He meets a man that comes to him and tells him, we designed the virus. The virus that's getting ready to attack your system, we designed, my partner and I designed. And if you kill one of us, then you won't know, because my partner has her part and I have my part, and we don't know each other's part, so to speak. So if you kill one of us, then you won't have the answer to your question. So what should happen? One of the partners, the one who actually designed the virus, who created the virus, she gets murdered. So he has one half of a partnership who can only help him with the half that he knows about, but he's smart enough to try to figure out how his partner created the virus. The bottom line is the assassin. Yeah, girl, you didn't read this book either, Nichelle? Oh, you got to read this book. This book is good. It is really, really good. So they're racing against time. They figure out when the attack is going to happen. And they're racing against time. Why did they name the book The President is Missing? Why? Because of all of this, the president snuck out of the White House. Didn't tell but 2 or 3 people where he was going, because this is how he met with the ones who created the virus. And while he was out, he didn't even tell his Secret Service team. And he asked them to respect the fact that he was going to sneak out of the White House, and they couldn't go with him because he needed to do this alone. Now, I want to say, until we got all the information, even I was beginning not to trust the president. Even I was beginning. I'm like, okay, wait. Now, what president don't take the Secret Service? And what real Secret Service is going to know that the president is going through the tunnels that they say that Kennedy brought Marilyn Monroe in and through? Let him go by himself. But you saw the Secret Service, they didn't put any. His head of service kept his promise. He didn't put any device on him, any tracking device on him, none of that. But they tracked the vehicle. They didn't track him. He said, "Don't track me," but he never told them don't track the vehicles. So they tracked the vehicle, and then the Secret Service man said, "I saw that when you were talking to me, you had 2 tickets to a particular baseball game." So he sent all the Secret Service to the baseball game, so that when the assassin was trying to kill that partner, that was her first kill. That partner, when she was killing her, shooting, and the president thought that they were after him, and they weren't. Secret Service came out of nowhere to rescue the president. And really the action was on from there, because on their way to get him to the safe house, some of those who were working with the assassin tried to kill off the vehicle, or to kill him within the vehicle that he was in. And all the time he thought they was after him, but they were after the man who created the virus. Because the man who had part in creating the virus used to work for the terrorists that wanted the virus to be released within the United States. So we see the 6 degrees of separation. The assassin worked for the terrorists, because he said, I'm going to get the virus. I'm going to get the password to the virus so I can start and stop this virus. But I want you to kill the creator. Now, listen, the creator of the virus, not only did she work for the terrorists, she was the terrorist's ex-girlfriend. Don't it sound good? It sounds like a whole lot of relationships that don't have terrorism. Well, maybe so. But terrorism and cyber cyber terrorism in it, but I can at least name one relationship for me. All right. Anyhow, moving on. We see they get to the safe house. He calls in all of those who he believes is brilliant in detecting, creating all kind of viruses that could happen. He brought in Israel. He brought in Germany. Wait, he brought in Russia. He called the Russian president, prime minister, whatever they call. He called the Russian president and said, well, it would be in your best interest to help. Now, let me say this. Russia was in bed with the terrorists. 6 degrees separation. So everybody was sort of intertwined and had a part in all of this. And he was trying to feud out and pull out who hired the terrorists. He wanted all this information along with how to stop the virus from doing the damage that it could do. Let me get to the bottom line so I don't have y'all on here all night and I don't lose my voice and don't have any to preach on Sunday. He finds out who hired. Well, let's say this. He captures the assassin. This woman is now, hear this, y'all. This woman is killing. She was a bad girl. Let me say this. Let me give you some history on her because the book did. She, I guess Russia, wherever she was from, soldiers, I guess it was during wartime, civil war for her country. And soldiers came to her home and they moved in, so to speak, into her home, and they constantly raped her mother. She gravitated towards one of the soldiers who taught her how to kill. He taught her how to kill. He taught her how to clean a rifle, dismantle a rifle, shoot a rifle, sharpshooter, when to shoot, how to breathe. He taught her all of this. He taught her how to be an assassin. And what he didn't teach her, she learned along the way. One day, he told her to shoot something, and she was shooting all over the place. He asked her, what was wrong with you? That's why I taught you how to shoot. You're not doing what I taught you. He snatched the rifle from her and began to shoot at the targets. He probably had some cans lined up. He said, now do it right. He put the rifle in her hand and she killed him. My kind of girl. She killed him and all of the soldiers that came to her mother's house to constantly rape her mother. They literally moved into the house and they all had sex with her mother. When those times would come, her mother would put headphones on her and her brother and put on classical music and tell her to listen to the music. Just listen to the music. The assassin name was Bach. That was what they called her because of the music she listened to. But anyhow, she killed the man who taught her how to be an assassin. With that being said, she ran away. When she ran away, they killed her mother. When she saw that they killed her mother, that's what made her go into being an assassin. So here, I believe we would call it Camp David, but they said a safe house. It was a common safe house. Everything that he needed was in this safe house. Actually, he was in the basement of his chief of staff house. That's where he went, to her basement, and she had it set up almost like the Oval Office. A lot of drama, a lot of action, a lot of shooting. They apprehend the assassin Bach. She was going around killing people, and she was pregnant. I'm like, your 9 months off. You don't have to kill nobody for 9 months. Can't you just, even a job give you some weeks or something. But she was pregnant. She was fulfilling jobs pregnant. Let me get to the end of this story. So everybody is breaking into the house. The terrorist soldiers, the assassin, because she wasn't after the president. She was after the man who co-created the virus. But she didn't get him. Secret Service got her. And when they got her and put her in her cell and questioned her, she told them she was pregnant and that she would help them. Only if, when she have her baby, that they would take her baby to her younger brother and let him raise. And that the money that she earned for assassinating men and women from all over the world, that they would give that to her brother. It was over like $8 million to raise her daughter. All right. So in that, she told them, they knew who the terrorist was because he made the threat that he was going to do that. But she also told them who hired him, which was the Russians. And the reason the Russians had to hire him, because the real people behind all of it were some Saudi Arabian royal family. And part of the royal family was discontented with who was the king from their royal family. And they wanted him assassinated, but they wanted to look like it came out of America. Y'all got to read the book. I'm telling you, it was lots of twists and turns. So when she gave him all of that, once he got all of that knowledge, and I'm talking about the president now, the last thing that we had to find out was who betrayed him. And it was a race against the clock. They had 30 minutes to figure out the password to stopping the virus. And they let the clock go down to like 49 seconds before they figured out the password. And you see everybody rejoice. And I said, this is too easy. You know how it's one of them, this can't be the end. It got to be a part 2. And when you flip it over to the epilogue, he's walking into the office, and he's talking to the director, the FBI director, and a few people. And you see everybody come in and everybody congratulating him for stopping the cyber terrorism. Bach gave everybody up. So he calls Russia and he tells them about their part. He calls a Saudi Arabian president and tells him, these are the family members who tried to assassinate you and wanted you dead. And they paid a terrorist through the Russians because they didn't want their hands on it to speak. So it would only lead back to the Russians, but it really led back to all of them. The Russians paid the terrorists. Well, when people pay for something, they want their money's worth. They paid him to make America look like they were responsible for it, and he didn't follow through. So, of course, they killed the terrorists. So the terrorists experienced terror. With all of that clear, he was still trying to figure out who was the traitor. When they were trying to figure out the password, somebody gave them the correct password. And that's how they stopped the cyber terrorism. When he had everybody in the room, he cleared the room of all of one person. And that was the one person he knew was the terror. Was the one who leaked the word Dark Ages that only 8 people knew about. The person who betrayed the president was contacted, and they told her that they had a virus that they were going to put in the system. So this person knew months before it even happened that it happened. The president looked at his chief of staff and asked her, "How could you betray us?" Now, she didn't betray him on purpose as an act of treason. When the people, I guess that handles everything technical, said there has been a virus, they had done it months prior to that. The bottom line, she told the person, "I can't, at this point, I've talked to you 2 or 3 times. I can't go to my president and tell him everything you want me to tell you. But if you go to his daughter and just say dark ages to her and it gets back to him, that will cause him to pursue. That will cause him to call you, and maybe you all could work it out." She just made one bad decision, and she kept making one after the other just to cover her feet. But the reason she made all of those bad decisions is because, 1, she didn't like him. 2, she didn't like the fact that he was president and didn't deserve to be president. And she felt that she could be put in a position other than chief of staff. Prior to her becoming chief of staff, she had ran, I believe, for the Senate or something along that line, and a scandal came out and she had to drop the race. And so to a degree she declined politically, but she rose on the consultant end, and that's how she got in the White House. She made it look like the vice president was the betrayer and set her up to look as though she was the one that betrayed. But the president knew the truth. And this is how he knew the truth. When he figured out who it was, he told her that we only have 30 minutes to discover the password to the cyber terrorism, or it was going to eat up everything in a wide world net. When he came in contact with the one who co-created, they figured it out within a day or so, but didn't tell anybody because that's how they were going to get the betrayer. So when it was getting down to them last 49 seconds, she basically gave them the password. The only person who would know the password was the one who betrayed him. How would she know the password? Because the person that phoned her was the creator, the other part of the team, the creator of the virus. And she sent her the password. I was right before the end of the first chapter. That it was the chief of staff. And he basically, exposed her. So that was that book. It was does it sound good, Nichelle? You probably could get it. Amazon had it, and I think Barnes and Noble might have had it for $1 or $2 cheaper. Get the book. It's a real good book. I wanted to tell the whole story. I hope I told it halfway decently. I'm gonna have to get off for tonight because I feel my throat sort of tightening up. I want to have some voice for Sunday, but get the book. It was a really, really good book. It's called "The President is Missing." He was only missing for a while. He only went into hiding. You go get it. Amen. He gonna. He wasn't missing. He just went into hiding. It's an excellent read. It's an excellent read. It's fast paced. I thank you for joining me on tonight. I'm going to say again at the end, the 2 books that we'll be reading, and I'm going to type it and put it on the air. The 2 books that we will be reading next month. Black Pain. It just looks like, oh, we're not hurting, by Terry Williams. Black Pain. The second one is Black Girls Don't Cry, Unveiling Our Pain and Unleashing Hope by Angelica Lee, Leigh. So get those 2 books for Friday, March 20th at 7:30 right here live. Nichelle, it was good to see you on. And for those that got on, you should have let me know you was here. I don't know. Y'all didn't type in nothing, so I didn't know. I just see the views. But enjoy the rest of your weekend. I will see you again Friday, March 20th, 7:30 right here for the Virtuous Divas Book Club. You all be blessed. Know that I love you. Talk to you later, Minister Nichelle. Bye-bye, y'all.